So there might...
So we've started recording, so welcome to everybody that's on the panel, and once we start having attendees jump on, then we will start on a more formal basis.
I noticed you've got a Q&A function there, Belinda. That's pretty cool.
That's right.
I haven't seen that one.
Yes, so with the webinar, there is some questions that we can pose that we can get some answers from. And there's also polls that we can do as well. So in future webinars where we might be looking at asking a range of questions, potentially as participants come on, they can answer those polls or participate in those polls. And we can talk about the results as we're participating through the webinar.
Yeah, I haven't tried doing a live webinar like this before, so I've only just been doing Zoom meetings and recording them. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I think for everybody, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve. So we have a range of participants on at the moment, which is great, and welcome everybody. We'll wait a few more minutes for other people to jump on, and then if we'll look at starting potentially at 1:05 formally.
But can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So there's a question that the department would like to explore with people that may register into the conference today. And that is, we're looking to prepare more information regarding essential services and specifics to do with farming. So we're just wanting to hear about whether or not people have had any issues from a harvesting perspective or regarding labour, maintaining supply of farm inputs, anything to do with crop protection permits, for example, or travelling between properties. So if anybody's got anything specific there that they feel we can provide some more Q&As on, that would be good. Otherwise, they can always phone in on our Farm Point hotline and we can look to address those. But we're interested in hearing if there's any constraints or anything across the agricultural community at the moment.
Right. Okay. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for participating. We have you as a panellist, and that will be to talk about potential issues that you're finding with your niche and smaller farming enterprises. Can you hear us okay? Just looking at connecting at the moment. Yep. Right. So Jennifer, just let me know if you've got any problems connecting on. And thanks again, everybody, for your patience as we are working through this one. Here we go. Yes, we can see Jennifer now, which is great. Welcome, Jennifer. Right, okay, I think what we'll do now is we'll start. Welcome everybody to the first of our webinars around what we're calling Paddock Talk. And Tasmanian Women in Agriculture have set up these Paddock Talks so during this time of COVID-19 we can remain connected and hear about issues that are concerning our networks so that we have the opportunity to feed that back into government and also support networks to ensure that now and in the future we're working on resources to support our sector. I'm the current chair of Tasmanian Women in Agriculture, And as part of our executive, we have Mandy Cooper, who is the Vice Chair, and also Lana, who is based at Campbelltown. Mandy's in West Tamar. And Lana has been working with Mandy behind the scenes to get our Paddock Talks going. So on behalf of Tasmanian Women in Agriculture, I would like to thank them very much for that. And I believe that this is going to be a really good initiative, along with the initiatives that we're working on with the Buy Tasmania First campaign, and also setting up some e-learning initiatives so that people within the network can have the opportunity to get the skills to set up their own online farm shops and distribution points. I'd like to welcome Jennifer Robinson, who's from Sprout, and John Clark from Raw, Caroline Brown, who we'll ask to provide an overview shortly around some of the things that government is working on from an agricultural perspective. And she will also be wanting us to pose a question through to the network as well. Elizabeth Skirving is also available from Rural Business Tas. And at some point, Elizabeth, I'll hand over to you just to provide an overview of what Rural Business Tas is doing in relation to support for Tasmanian businesses as well. Caroline, if I could hand over to you. I know that the government is looking at a range of questions from participants. So attendees, if you've got the opportunity and you want to ask a question, please put your hand up or send a message through the chat so that I can unmute you and you can ask your question directly to a panellist. The question that the government's looking for is in relation to setting up essential services through the network, whether there's been any issues around harvesting, obtaining labour, if there's been any constraints around obtaining any farm inputs, and also travelling between properties. What they're looking at is providing a range of information through to the network, and whether there's any extra information that we can circulate around questions and answers. So Caroline, if I could hand over to you. And Caro, you should be able to respond, Caro.
Her image is looking really still. I'm wondering if she's dropped out, Linda.
Okay.
Someone might be able to flick her a text message. It looks like she's frozen there.
Right. Okay. So the government feed isn't working as strong enough as we would like there. John, perhaps from a Rural and Live and Well, if you wouldn't mind providing an overview for attendees just as to the services that RAW has and any issues that we might need to be aware of from your perspective.
Yeah, so RAW made an early decision to move to phone support and video support for people. There was a couple of reasonings behind that. One is that we didn't want to become transmitters. We obviously work with pretty vulnerable people, and the last thing we would want is a raw worker to be going from property to property and actually transmitting something. I think in the case of this current pandemic, rural people do have an upper hand, a bit of an advantage. There's a lot of rural people saying, hey, look, we're socially isolated anyway. There's not a lot of people that come onto our properties, and, you know, we're kind of working pretty hard 7 days a week here anyway. So we didn't want to be a vector for transmission. So we've been working via the phone. We also felt like there'd be more demand as well. So we're kind of saving sort of 2-3 hours a day by not being in our cars, so we can actually take more calls. But we are in a small way starting to gear up. So I believe as of next week, we're gearing up to be able to do some home visits to particularly vulnerable people. And we've got some negotiations going on with a few local IGAs as well. Coles and Woolies have been talking about online deliveries for vulnerable people, but that obviously doesn't extend to people in rural areas. So we're looking at possibly equipping our staff with the sufficient PPE and training to be able to deliver groceries that they have purchased themselves from their IGA. So at the moment, that's a pilot program in the Midlands area around our office in the Oatlands area. So that's got some really good potential. So we are gearing up to get back into our cars. And we've been talking a bit about training as well with Mandy and Lana. So we're looking at being able to offer some online training and support as well. So continuing to roll out mental health training.
That's really important. Thanks, John. I'm not sure whether Caroline's got back on as yet. She looks like she's still trying to get her feet up. Jennifer, if you could jump on as Sprout and provide an overview of what you've been seeing through your sector. Hopefully Jennifer's able to jump on board. Yep, not sure yet. I think to make sure that this is working effectively, what I might do is I am going to open this up so that everybody can have video and mute and audio if possible. But what we'll do is if it starts to become unwieldy with people talking over themselves, I might have to mute everybody. So I've just unmuted all the panellists, and I'm going to, where possible, enable all of the participants to participate as well.
Can you hear me okay, Belinda, now?
So if Janie, I can see you, Janie Finlay, Ella. So if all of you are getting on board now, and we'll do the best that we can to navigate this new way of working. Jennifer, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you, but
yeah. It's a poor connection, I think, is the trouble. So you keep cutting in and out. So what I might do, Caroline, are you available?
I can hear you. You can't hear me.
We can, but it's very quiet.
Yes, I'll try and use my computer any further from what it is, and my iPad, which I was originally on, it's just sizing, just won't log me back in. Yeah,
I'm sorry, Caro, you're really quiet.
I'll try something else.
Right, okay. So Caro, we'll wait for Caroline to jump back on board. Lana, while I'm working to get everybody on, if you could provide a bit of an overview from your perspective in Campbelltown, what you've been hearing and seeing on the ground with how, one, people are affected, two, how they're adjusting their business models, and what some of the gaps you've seen.
Well, I mean, in Campbelltown, probably from a consumer point of view, we have access challenges because we don't get any of the, well, most of the delivery services that everyone's getting in the cities. So I guess producers from the north and south are not going to be able to logistically provide or supply to the Midlands region all the fresh produce and things that are going to be being shared everywhere else. Louisa Street's probably a good person to talk to about challenges that the farmers particularly might be having. I see she's online and she's been in the chat, so maybe she can give you a bit more information about some of the challenges. Louise is the president of the Midlands Ag Association, so she would have been talking to farmers and about, you know, different challenges they're having. So she'd probably have some good feedback about that, about farmers in this area. But obviously the farmers in this area don't supply generally direct to consumers. So people who live in the area can't access the farmers' produce anyway, because what the farmers produce goes to different places, not direct to consumers. So.
Right. Okay, so we're getting more and more people on here. So as I'm trying to work through and navigate this, so thanks everyone.
Belinda, it's Caroline here. You should
excellent.
be back on now.
Thank you. If you could talk about some of the questions that you would like to talk to the network about, please.
Hi everybody. So Caroline Brown here within the Department of Primary Industry. We're currently working in two ways with regards to the current situation that Tasmania and the world faces. The first one is that a lot of our team are responding to essential traveller requests and dealing with people coming in and out of the state, and also regarding labour and backpackers and some of those quarantine related matters. And the other area, more importantly, is that we're interested in gathering information from the agribusiness and farming community about any constraints to supply chains or harvesting, labour, anything like that at all, so that we can feed that up the line and understand and hopefully be able to look at what we may be able to do to assist in that situation. We have been talking to quite a number of our industry stakeholders with regards to these, so that we can keep obviously ourselves informed of how people are being impacted, but any insights that women in agriculture can provide to us is also really important. Thanks, Belinda.
Thanks, Caro. Right, how's everybody going? There's more people jumping on screen, and I'm trying to go through and make sure that there is audio, but it could be also everybody's using their streaming services at the moment, so it could be that might be posing some issues as well. So thank you again very much for your patience as we work through this. Annette Reid, hoping that you are able to chat. Can you provide anything from your perspective and what you're seeing and how things have been working from your area?
Hi, Belinda. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, good. Look, speaking personally, because that's all I can do, because I don't see anyone and haven't seen anyone else for weeks. We, as small producers supplying into our main customer base of restaurants and cafes, took a big hit very early on. So at this stage, we are working frantically, just we're winding down anyway after a particularly bad season. So we're kind of reeling from two things, I suppose, but at the same time feeling pretty lucky, and in that we have a lot of space, and we can get outside, so that's great. But at this particular stage for us, not a lot has changed in that nothing's really hit yet. I think we're still very much in those early stages of, it still seems very unreal. We've been very lucky in that Harvest Market, which is one of that's our bread and butter. Weekly supply has been really wonderful in setting up an online store, and that's really that's going to carry us over for a little while. So can't say how absolutely enough how grateful we are to Harvest Market for what they've put in place there. We, like a lot of other people, are really feeling how, or maybe it's only us, I don't know, feeling how behind the eight ball we are when it comes to our social media skills and our online marketing and all of that side of things, trying to get all that up to speed, all those things that we've been going to do when we get a little bit of time, and now we're just, now it's just crucial. So working flat out, really liking to have a rest, but not really hasn't happened yet. but all in all, yeah, pretty good. We are getting still a little bit of a little bit of, oh, I'll tell you what has happened. Because of what we're doing, we in the seed market, nurseries have just taken off. Gardening has become the new craze for everybody. So some of our stock that has been moving very quickly through the nurseries. So that's been a bit of an up. So it's definitely been a case of when one door closes, another opens, and we'll just see where it takes us.
Well, that's great, Annette. And I know that you're working through, like many, and adjusting your business as best you can. You did have a question that you raised about a comment, family challenges working together.
Can I ask that now?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so John, this might be something, I don't know who to address this to, but it's something that I've noticed in talking to a lot of farming families, and I, at the risk of being gender biased here, we do live in a community where for the most part it's our women. This is women in ag, you know. It's our women who are doing the caring and the home side of things. It's for the most part, when there's when it's one or the other, it's the men who are going out doing the working. What I'm noticing out on the farms, I should say, what I'm noticing in quite a few people that I've spoken to is that the women who are looking after children, who are doing the house stuff, who may have had an outside job and have had to come home, who are now having to care for kids, who are having to homeschool, are really taking the whole self-isolation and hygiene side of things really seriously. On the other hand, their partners who are really not, as you said before, John, not even necessarily feeling the effects because we are socially isolated anyway, are getting out in the paddock, doing their thing. They're going to work. They're seeing other people. They're having their social contact, whether it be out, you know, fencing, buying materials, whatever it happens to be. And not necessarily taking as seriously the issue that whole hygiene thing. So what I'm seeing time and time again is that women caught up in the house, isolated, can't get away from kids, are doing all they can. Husband comes home. To give you an example, a simple example, called in at a bakery on the way home and got a pie, and wife says, "What are you doing?" Okay, so he's got a pie, but then she says, "So what about the bread? Did you think to get the bread?" And he says, "Oh, I thought you'd get that later." And she's working really hard to be only going out once, and he's not thinking beyond that. So I could give a million examples of things like that I've heard, but how do we get our people who have got that freedom to really take it seriously, to not all be jumping into a ute altogether, to be thinking about that distancing, sharing that load, so that the people who are at home doing that hard emotional side of things, the holding the family together stuff, are not feeling as if all their actions are being sabotaged.
Yeah,
John,
and
if you could answer
yeah,
that,
absolutely. I'll just comment on that. And I've been hearing similar things too. I was talking to a mechanic the other night whose wife has a little baby. I think he's about 9 or 10 weeks old, and she's really petrified because he's going out and repairing machinery all day and coming into contact with customers. And then he's coming home and she's sort of saying, you know, you're putting myself and the baby at risk and that sort of thing. And so, you know, he was kind of saying to me, look, it's really irrational. I think the thing here is, and I think men can tend to play the, oh, you're just being silly card, and, you know, it's, you know, there's not a great risk, and I was fine, and this sort of thing. What you're really looking at is people doing kind of a risk assessment in their heads And women are sort of saying, look, there is a significant risk here, and I'm concerned about that, and I'm concerned about the kids. And if one of us got sick, it would really impact our family and our operation. And you've got blokes going, well, I don't think it's a really high risk. I work in a high risk environment, and a bloody virus isn't going to, you know, this sort of thing. So people are working off different grids, if you like, or different filters when it comes to actually assessing this risk. And we've got a bit of a conflict of not quite worldviews, but at least we've got a conflict of potentially values and filters. So I think that's worthwhile recognising that people see it differently. And I think the other thing is one way to communicate it, and men have been saying to me, look, you know, she's really stressed, she's really irritable, and all these kind of things. And so they're sort of, they're picking up on that. And I think one way to communicate to men might be to say, listen, I am concerned about our family. The kids aren't at school anymore, so I'm having to manage that. I did the weekly shop yesterday and also last weekend, and it took me almost twice as long. I don't know why it took me so long, but it did. I just couldn't find what I needed to get, and half the stuff wasn't there. And it was just a really frustrating, horrible experience to not be able to get things that you need. So I get that whole idea of the women going out and trying to navigate through the supermarkets, and obviously only go once a week or once a fortnight, however often you do it. So there is a lot of stress, and I think it's important to say to partners to say what would really help me to kind of stress less is if you were able to do X, Y, Z, and be very clear about what you're actually asking. Sometimes we say, look, you know, I'm really stressed. I need you to pitch in. I need you to help out. I need you to do more, or I need you to worry about some of this stuff. And it's quite vague and nebulous. And I think guys are very sort of literal. So if you can say, what I need you to do is to make sure that your boots and clothes come off at the back door, and I'm going to put them through the laundry. And this was the case with this particular mechanic. She didn't want him to come inside with his clothes on because he'd been in contact with customers. So being very clear about your expectations, but also recognising that people are using different risk assessments. He may never perceive the risk that you perceive. It's just not in his thinking. So I think if you can say, this is what's going to help me to manage the stress around our family and our business. If you can do X, Y, Z, I think that gives you a pretty good shot of dealing with it. Does that help?
Yeah, that's good. And I absolutely agree with you. It's okay. That's fine if women are able to say that. If they're able to get that message across, and that's
absolutely.
There's the problem. It's all very well to be able to say it, but
just not listening. Some people.
It has to be a two-way thing because things are only going to get harder within households, and there has to be a lot of give and take.
Yeah, I think we've got to really modify our expectations. I'm about to put up a video on the Facebook, the Rural Alive and Well Facebook page, so you can check in on that from time to time, but we're going to try and address some of these things. So we have a relationship counsellor on our staff who's also a psychologist. She's also very experienced in trauma and suicide prevention, and we're posing some of these questions to her. And one of the things she said was that we need to modify our expectations a little bit, and we need to expect that there is going to be conflict at home, stress, disagreements, that sort of thing, because we're kind of living on top of each other a little bit now, especially if you've got kids at home. So I think managing our expectations, and if you expect that things are going to be challenging, then you're not so disappointed when they actually are.
Thank you, John. And good comment, Annette. If I could pass over for some brief comments, please, to Louisa, and then I'll move, once you've finished, Louisa, to Elizabeth Skirving.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, got me. So I'd just like to make some comments on this particular topic. I'm a woman on a farm. I manage the household, but I also do all the livestock work and things, so I'm out on the farm as well. I agree with everything that Annette's saying. We have contractors coming onto the farm. It's absolutely necessary that they come. Now, I was talking to one the other day. He's one of the livestock guys. His partner works in the ICU at the hospital, and she's dealing direct with the COVID-19 cases, which I guess makes me quite nervous. And those people, we have a lot of gates on our farms, and I know that there's been instruction for people in the city not to touch metal handrails, door handles, those type of things. But these metal gates, I mean, everyone's going in and out. So I've been going around just with a spray bottle with a Septol, which is a farm-based, like a cleaner or a disinfectant, and spraying the latches down. But I know the other people around me aren't that worried about it, or probably haven't even thought about it. So I just think that that's maybe a conversation that we could start. And the other thing, we had an accident here a couple of days ago. My partner was involved. He crushed his finger quite seriously, and he was adamant that he wasn't going to the hospital to get any help. So I've been nursing the finger. I don't know if it's going to fall off or not, but I think as time goes on, people are going to be nervous about seeking medical help, and that's probably a conversation that we also need to have, and also make sure that you're not like me and you know where your first aid gear is for before the emergency happens.
Thank you, Louisa. There's some pertinent questions there. Elizabeth, before I move to you, Caroline, there's been a couple of questions come through the Q&A board around this space. How is an essential traveller categorised in agriculture and agricultural services? What's the situation with transporting product from one farm to another farm for processing? Louise has raised some interesting points in relation to hygiene practices on farm with people moving from farm to farm. And Christine Manns also asked a question around what are the protocols with Pick Your Own?
So there are some really good fact sheets for everybody. If you go to a website, it's kind of like the point or the voice of the most current situation that the government has regarding coronavirus. It's www.coronavirus, coronavirus.tas.gov.au. That has all of the information that the government has, not only about family support, but it also has information about business and industry support, and it also has information about essential travellers. Now, within that website, it also has a link. If people look yesterday at a media release by Elise Archer, the Minister for Building and Construction, it does talk about the fact that building and construction is an essential service, and it's to go on as normal, but practicing with good self-distancing and hygiene. It is the same with agriculture. Agriculture is classed as essential service, and that harvesting and other areas do need to continue. And so it's about practicing good hygiene, good self-distancing. Now, the reason I mention that media release is halfway down, people can click on a link that takes you to a work cover website, and that has some really good information on there about how the that industrial industry is expected to handle their good practices whilst on site. And I can't see any difference at all with regards to what agriculture could consider as a basic level. The other resources that people may be seeing, if they're registered in on AusVeg or some of the other food handling quality assurance areas, they do have really good tips about how people can handle their food hygiene and also how they're managing to work within the processing sector. So AusVeg, food, what's the group that you're involved with, B?
Fresh Produce Safety
Fresh
Centre.
Produce Safety Centre.
Yeah, so there's those areas where it does step out some basic tips. Now, it can be as simple as, and we know people have been doing this, putting signs on gates saying, if you enter this property, this is what we expect you to do. Now, I know some farmers have been doing that already, particularly with those people who have vulnerable people at their home. And more of our farming community are getting used to being aware of good biosecurity practices. And this is similar, except we need to take it that extra step around our own hygiene and self-distancing. So if anybody has any questions around what to do and they're still not sure, by going to that coronavirus website, there's also a 1-800 number that they can click into that gives the people access to health information. And I'm just trying to get that number up for people at the moment, but my computer keeps sizing like everybody else's to be able to give you that over the phone. In relation to moving between properties, as I said, it's an essential service. So it's about practicing that good social distancing. Anybody who's actually just coming and visiting, they really should not be doing that because they're not performing an essential service.
Yeah. Caroline, we've had a subsequent question and I saw some issues that were identified on the ABC last night in relation to backpackers. Louise has asked an additional question about backpacker accommodation and harvesting their potato paddock. I know that through this COVID-19 disruption, crops don't stop growing, that we still need these crops to be harvested by people. So that comes back to the points that you've raised about making sure that we have current information available to jump on to the government's information site, and we'll get that information and circulate that around to the participants via our social media feeds.
So in relation to backpackers, Belinda, so if the backpacker is performing harvesting, then they are performing an essential service, so they should be still allowed to stay within the accommodation. If the backpacker is having any issues with that, again, if the accommodation house looks at the coronavirus website, that does give accommodation houses some information to be able to work through. If the backpacker is still concerned about any issue, they can get in contact on the Farm Point hotline, 1300 292 292. We are currently working through those responses. However, if the backpacker has been in the state for longer than 14 days, then they are okay and they are classed as an essential worker because they are picking and they are harvesting. The issues regarding any types of exemptions are now with people coming into the state. If they've already been here for longer than 14 days, then they should be able to still continue to harvest. And as I said, if the accommodation house has any concerns, then they should get in contact with the health hotline, which is on the top of the coronavirus website, and they can work through any issues that the accommodation house may have. But they should be able to be accommodated in their current accommodation.
An additional question, Caroline, on this same area from Elizabeth Skirving around extending backpacker visas, as they're not able to go anywhere, but they're useful to have here while we're in a state of lockdown. And as I said before, we've still got crops that need harvesting, cows that need milking, etc. So how does that work?
So at the moment, I understand that the jurisdictions in the Commonwealth are working on this issue. I can't provide any further information on that at the moment. The website that the Australian government has, and this is where we all love a federated system, we're all different. It works in Tasmania's favour we've got that moat and we can be Fortress Tasmania. But when it comes to other areas, like, for example, the Commonwealth, there are other different areas that the Commonwealth is required to work through, and this is one of those. So I do believe that the National Farmers Federation have been talking to the Australian government in relation to that. People can keep informed about what's happening in a Commonwealth area by looking at serviceaustralia.gov.au or the health.gov.au website. But I'm confident that once there's a landing on this, that the NFF will be out in the public arena fairly quickly to address that situation. I do believe David Littleproud, the Minister for Agriculture and Water, was on a live link this morning, but unfortunately I haven't been able to read the transcript of that yet. You can be assured once we get that information, anything current, we would also put that information or link up on our Farm Point website. But it's something that the Commonwealth's aware of.
Thanks very much, Caro. Elizabeth, if you are able to jump on, Elizabeth Skirving from Rural Business Tas, and just provide an overview from your perspective as to the services that are available to the network for people that have farming businesses.
Thanks, Belinda. Hello, everybody. We are gearing up for probably the longer term rather than the short term response at the moment, given Annette's comment that most people are still in crisis mode and looking at just day to day. We will have more financial counsellors available. We've actually onboarded one today, but to allow anyone within the farm or rural and regional Tasmania who has a small business to be able to get support from a financial counselling point of view. If people need support in accessing some of the grants and support measures that are available, we'll have those people either via phone or Zoom electronic means to support to go through those situations, work out what you need to provide and help those that need that help to navigate the systems. Our phone number, which is the 1300 88 3276, is available to log calls for any assistance that people may need for that. We are also providing some support through the emergency relief package to vulnerable Tasmanians that are needing to self-isolate and go into quarantine. That's being triaged through the Communities Tasmania and the Public Health Hotline, but certainly there will be, as time goes on, a need for people to continue to self-isolate, and we'll be able to support those with financial counselling and counselling support just to keep them safe during that 2-week period. We're also providing quite a bit of information through social media, the same as RAW and others. But if anyone has any questions or ideas, we're certainly happy to take those on board to support our farming and rural and regional Tasmanian communities.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. That's terrific. And if any of you need that service, please don't hesitate to reach out to Rural Business Tas.
Can I also,
sorry, Elizabeth.
Sorry, I never thought to say, but for those that are potentially looking to support through the Business Tasmania hotline, we are aware that there are long wait times for that at the moment. So if you are aware of someone that's struggling to get through with that Business Tasmania hotline, they can utilise our service to help with logging those calls if need be.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I have one comment to make via Susie Lowry, and then I have a question posed from Hayley Newitt. So going on the conversation around people moving from farm to farm and service providers moving from farm to farm, Susie's noted on the question and answer that they've actually placed signs on the gates entering onto their property, so that people entering into that area have to gain permission now to enter, unless you're part of their normal business contractors and their staff. There are also signs on all their sheds stating what is required for the process while they're on their property. And I think that's some really good initiatives there that they've undertaken. I think the information that we provide, any awareness around the different protocols that we all have on each of our sites, is really useful information. So thank you very much, Susie, in relation to that. Hayley, if I can move to your question, this is directed for you, John. Moving to telehealth, video conferencing methods of delivering mental health services to people in rural and remote communities, how has the response been so far? Hayley says that she's a psychologist by trade, but has been staying a stay-at-home mum now for the last 2 years, living on a cattle farm. The father's a cattle farmer as well and is quite anti-technology. We also know the existing challenge that people in rural and remote areas are already having, with a group less likely to want to or recognise the need to access mental health services. Do you think there's a considerable amount of people in rural and remote areas who will be or stay adverse to accessing health services, potentially more so now with the forced changes in service delivery? Or do you think attitudes are changing?
Yeah, I think it's a real challenge to us. Our whole model has always been, let's get face-to-face with people, drive up a farm gate, have a chat over a fence post with someone who's doing it tough. And that's really worked well. I think when you work face-to-face with people, you can establish a really good rapport, and people trust people who will come out and talk to them. And there is a general distrust of someone sitting in an office somewhere in a city trying to tell you how to manage your mental health. So that is a challenge for us. For our existing clients, I think we have a really good relationship. So transitioning them to phone support has been really easy. But I would say our team leaders at the moment are absolutely inundated with new referrals and new phone calls. So I think the present situation is really motivating people to get in touch and to have a chat with our workers. So yes, it is a challenge, and I can relate. My dad's an 83-year-old sheep and cattle farmer. He still doesn't have a smartphone, so I still can't even send him photos of the grandkids yet. But he's on that phone all the time. He basically manages his workforce off his mobile phone. So being able to contact him via phone is doable, although I know for my dad, someone going out there to talk to him face-to-face would get a lot better results, because the length of my phone calls with my dad would probably be about 30 seconds at a time. And I'm his son, so I don't know how it'd go talking to a mental health professional. But look, telephone it's a decent plan B, I'd say, in the current situation. But as I said, we're equipping people with PPE. If someone was in a really suicidal state and we really needed to get out there, we'd probably get out there, just maintain social distancing, probably stay outside, and obviously not put any clients at risk with our own hygiene, but we would respond appropriately.
Thanks very
much. So having said that, we would really like people to jump on the phone and call RAW if they've got concerns about anyone, or if they want to talk to someone. All our guys are in the offices at the moment, so potentially they could do more work than ever before. So 1300 help mate, I'll put that in the chat at the end. And also, if you do have questions like the one that Annette answered, we're really keen to know what the questions are so that we can actually provide some information to people on strategies as to how they can manage their wellbeing at the moment. So specific questions, we'd love that from you. So just jump on our Facebook page and send whatever questions you've got to us.
Thanks very much, John. Caro, another question for you that I don't think we had quite answered from Christine is around Pick Your Own. So is Pick Your Own classed as an essential service? And if it's not, how is the grower going to manage that?
It's an interesting one, Belinda and Christine. I think at the end of the day, it really is going to come down to the
individual farmer, because even when it's pick your own, it's actually a harvesting process. So Christine really needs to think about how she's going to manage her harvest with people coming on and off the property, and how they're going to work with their self-distancing and hygiene, and how as a farmer you're also managing that. Again, good biosecurity practice and risk management here I think would really assist, and it can be a simple issue of putting signs up, and also having sanitizer or Sanitec there that people can wash with. But I think the broader question for you, Christine, to consider is, how do you feel that self-pick will continue when most people are going to be practicing the requirement the government has asked of people, and that is to stay at home? So I would say that there's possibly a broader issue that, Christine, you might need to consider, that whilst government hasn't said that those kind of harvesting operations are restricted at all, it may very well be that you're going to see some impacts in your business, in that a lot of people will make the decision to stay at home, which is what the Australian government and the state government has asked of people. So it's about how can you transition your model to assist those people in getting your produce, and you're able to also manage that risk for yourself. It could very well be that you're taking pick orders, and then it's about how you might be able to work with another, a number of people that can help you manage the picking of those orders as workers, so that you've got less people that you're not aware of coming onto your property to do that picking. So you may have to think about how you work with that, but essentially harvesting, as I said, is still classed as an essential service, but people may opt out because they are doing the stay-at-home regime.
Christine, hopefully that's answered your question. She did note that she's got other growers wanting to buy fruit, so I'd go with what you've outlined, Caro, in relation to biosecurity protocols and also allowing people onto farm. So it's going on some of those threads that we've already talked about in relation to working out what your protocols are on farm, ensuring that you're maintaining those social distancing and biosecurity protocols that are needed to be maintained. It probably will be, if you've got any additional questions, to get onto the government's website and or call one of the ag officers if you've got any further questions there.
And that number B is 1300 292 292. However, as I said, from the public health perspective, that's a different matter again. But ultimately, good biosecurity practices should really assist many of our farmers here get through harvest safely.
Thank you. Kim Croker, I'm hoping that you'll be able to participate. If you are able to talk, if you could provide just a bit of an overview on what you're seeing in relation to supply chain issues with meat in particular. Lana, I don't know whether you could check to see if Kim's available. Caroline, some of the issues that we've been hearing through from our supply base, in particular those that have meat livestock, they're noticing issues around delivery, opportunities reducing in regard to access to abattoirs, protocols around the food safety requirements there. Kim, I have tried to unmute you. See if you can try again. There we go. See if you can try again there. Otherwise, you might be on mute yourself. I've unmuted you there. Can you hear Kim? No. So, Caro, in summary, what we're hearing is abattoirs, access to abattoirs being reduced, so they're not having as many kill opportunities there through abattoirs. The delivery side of things with supply chains is being impacted, and also looking at some of the initiatives that growers are looking at, the smaller niche growers, because their traditional supply chains have stopped in restaurants and pubs and clubs, for example, opportunities to set up delivery services, but one, access to chill freight opportunities, and two, food safety protocols around that. What sort of things are the government considering there?
So in relation to the abattoir, is that for service kills?
Yes.
Okay. And is that request come in from Kim? What we can do, if you, Belinda, can just list down who those queries have come from, or what we can do is actually come back through Women in Ag and just provide some answers more broadly out to the membership base as to where they can go to with regards to some of these matters. Would that be better?
I think Kim's online now. Are you available, Kim?
Yes, I am online. Just to clarify, currently there are no issues, but it could be a potential issue in the future if abattoirs close due to either new legislation or just health reasons, like if their staff were sick.
I think Lou's got some issues or some concerns about supply chain too on the large scale, because they currently, all of their sheep go across the strait to be processed. So there's different issues with the small scale to the large scale, but still they all have the same concerns.
Yes, I'd agree with that. I've heard, Caroline, with there's been a reduction in animals being moved through the abattoir supply chain in relation to opportunities for getting their animals dispatched and go through that process. So there needs to be some heads up around that just to see where the choke points are there. And another one that's emerging is in relation to access to freight with moving small to medium sized product around that might need to go through a chill chain process, where those vehicles are unable to be accessed because people of a smaller scale are wanting to move product.
Okay, so we'll take that on note and see where we pick that up from other stakeholders as well. We are, as I said at the start, regularly getting in contact with people to hear where there are constraints. So I'll certainly take that on board. And if there's any information that I can share out with the network on where to go to if they start to experience some of those issues down the track, I can provide that information for you to circulate through the network, Belinda.
Thank you. Is there anything else specifically from your point, Kim, that you'd like raised?
No, I just shared on the chat that the legislation, Health Act, has been changed to ensure that farmers markets are allowed to stay open. So if anyone's in that sales point, that could be useful information for them.
Thank you, Kim. Lana, is there anything that you'd like to add there from a supply chain point of view that you're aware of?
Yeah, well, Kim and I were talking the other day just about the home delivery issue with refrigerated or products that require refrigeration for food safety purposes. You know, it's not a case where you can leave anything on the doorstep for a period of time. And whilst most people are going to be home for the next 4 weeks, then needs to be a way, I guess, and I don't know whether they have to just work this out individually when they're doing their deliveries. I don't know if Harvest Market has something around that, so there's a refrigerated or something, that a cooler that's keeping the produce cool as it sits, or if they have a process where they're letting the customer know it's delivered, so it's taken in the required amount of time, or where the liability is if it's left to sit for 2 hours and goes past that that date, that time period that it's allowed to sit without refrigeration.
Thanks, Lana. So, Caroline, there might be some questions and answers that we might need to have put up and available for people that are in fresh produce, any type of produce that is also required to have that cool chain maintained, just so that there's some questions and answers there. I think there's also an opportunity for the government to have some awareness around those supply chain issues, not only from a larger producer point of view, but also from a small niche producer that has had to look for alternative supply chains, and some of the choke points that are there also.
Yeah. If I drop out, it's because I've run out of battery.
Okay.
So
well, our hour is now up. I'd like to thank everybody for participating. I'd like to thank the panellists that have made their time available. So Jennifer, John, Mandy, Lana, Elizabeth and others. Your questions have been really relevant, and I think that this first Paddock Talk has been very useful. The next one that we're looking to set up is around our hashtag Buy Tasmania First campaign, and what we're endeavouring to do there is to connect producers with consumers. So we will look at advertising that one to see if we can get that webinar going where there is a direct connection. What I encourage all of you to do is make yourself aware of information that's available from different sources. Reach out to RAW, reach out to Rural Business Tas, reach out to government portals where you need to, and also reach out to our network as well, so that we're aware of issues that we can also direct to different pathways. In the meantime, keep safe, keep hand washing, keep social distancing, and like all of us, let's try and get used to how we can use these webinars better. Thank you very much, everybody, and take care.
Thanks, Belinda.
Thanks, Belinda. Thanks, everyone.
You did an awesome job. That was amazing.
Thanks, Belinda.
Thank you.
And Mandy.
I'm going to